I stood at the counter like anyone else. No watch, no suit, no logo on my chest. Just jeans, a soft hoodie, and a crumpled $5 bill in my palm. And they laughed. I had asked for a regular black coffee, no frills. No sugar, no oat milk nonsense. Just caffeine in a cup. The barista looked me over like I'd ordered filet mignon at a drive-thru. Then she smirked and turned to her coworker. Another one of those. She whispered, loud enough for me to hear. He chuckled. Probably gonna sit here all day for the free Wi-Fi too. I said nothing. The cafe wasn't busy. 3 people in line behind me. One elderly man reading the paper by the window. And yet I stood there, being humiliated for not wearing a Rolex. They had no idea who I was. They didn't know I designed the layout of this shop, that I approved every bean supplier, that the Wi-Fi they mocked was a free initiative. I personally funded for single mothers who needed remote workspace. They didn't know the name on their paycheck came from my last name, but they were about to, because in exactly 7 minutes, I was going to teach them the most important lesson of their careers. Character shows when no one important is watching. But today, I was watching, and they had just laughed themselves into unemployment. My name is Devin Carter. I'm 42 years old, born and raised in Detroit. And I own 22 independent cafes across the Midwest, most of them under the name Poorhouse Roasters. We're not Starbucks, and that's on purpose. We're the spot for community moms, college kids, janitors, delivery drivers, and entrepreneurs who build dreams over burnt fingertips and early mornings. That was always the point. That's why I started this chain after walking away from a job at a private equity firm that almost destroyed me. The first Poorhouse opened in a broken-down laundromat on the east side. I served every single customer myself. I roasted beans out back with a portable drum roaster and hand-wrote every chalkboard special. We made enough to keep the lights on. Then we made enough to open another one. By year 3, I had 7 shops. Year 5, 17. But that's the problem. When growth hits fast, things slip. And what slips first is culture. 3 months ago, we started getting strange reviews at one of the downtown locations, Poorhouse 14. The shop in Lincoln Park. The neighborhood was wealthier, younger, trendier. The reviews didn't complain about the coffee. They complained about attitude. Staff seems judgmental. Felt weird being here in work clothes. I just wanted a coffee, not a fashion show. So I asked the district manager what was going on. He brushed it off. Just yelp, noise. He said, probably the usual cranky crowd. I didn't argue. I just made a note. Then a week later, my friend Carlos, who works maintenance at the Public Library, texted me from that exact cafe. Man, your staff just treated me like I was homeless. I had paint on my boots. That's all. He apologized. But inside, I boiled. Because I remembered how it felt to be ignored. To be sized up by my clothes. To walk into a place and know I was already being underestimated. And if that was happening in my cafe, then I had failed my own mission. So I cleared my calendar, picked a rainy Tuesday morning, and I walked in wearing the same beat-up hoodie I wore when I opened the first store. No driver, no assistant, no B-entrance. Just me and a $5 bill. The staff that morning, 2 baristas behind the counter, late 20s, stylish, sharp-tongued. The girl wore thick glasses and spoke in a tone that belonged more on a runway than in a coffee shop. The guy had a handlebar mustache, 2 tattoos, and 0 respect in his eyes. Neither of them recognized me, which was perfect, because I needed to see how they treated someone they believed was beneath them. And what I saw, let's just say it wasn't the pour-over that left a bitter taste. Next, she snapped without looking up. Her name tag said Renee. Thick framed glasses, silver rings on every finger, and a tone that made you feel like ordering coffee was an inconvenience. I stepped forward and gave a small smile. Just a small black coffee. Please. No cream. No sugar. Renee's eyes lifted just enough to scan me from head to toe hoodie. Faded jeans. No wedding ring. Nothing designer. She didn't smile back. She turned to the guy behind her, Kyle. Based on his name, Tegan muttered under her breath. He looks like he's about to ask for the Wi-Fi password and stay all day. Kyle laughed. Bet it's another one of those I'll pay in change types. My heart didn't race. My voice didn't rise. But something inside me cracked a little. They didn't know who I was. And they didn't care who I was. Because in their eyes, I wasn't anyone worth treating with respect. I was just a body. I pulled out a 5 and handed it to Renee. She didn't take it immediately, just wiped her hand with a towel first. I've like touching a bill from me might stain her. And she rolled her eyes. Cash. Cute. Do you also want a punch card for your 5th coffee free? Kyle grinned behind her. Better hope he doesn't ask for the bathroom code. They weren't whispering. They weren't even hiding it. The people behind me heard it too. One man shifted uncomfortably. A woman in gym clothes raised her eyebrow. But no one said anything. I stepped aside after paying. Saturday, down at the small table near the window. The one without an outlet. They made me wait 9 minutes. When she finally brought the coffee, she didn't say a word. Just dropped it on the table. Lid askew, the cup half full. I looked at it, then at her. Thanks, I said quietly. She didn't respond, just turned and walked away like I was invisible. The insult wasn't in what they said. It was in how casual they made it. Like they did this every day. Like treating people like trash was just part of the job description. And maybe, in their world, it was, but not in mine. Not in my cafe. And in that moment, with the bitter taste of cheap judgment on my tongue and their laughter still echoing from behind the counter, I knew one thing. They were about to learn who they were mocking. And this lesson would be written in permanent ink on their HR files. I stayed seated, didn't sip the coffee, didn't check my phone. I just watched. Renee and Kyle went on like nothing happened. They laughed, joked, leaned over the pastry counter, scrolled through TikTok clips between customers. Every time someone walked in, they looked up just long enough to scan the outfit, the attitude, the perceived worth. A man in overalls, short replies, no smile. A young woman in yoga pants and Louis Vuitton, full charm, activated. It was a system, a quiet hierarchy, built not on service, but on assumption. That's when I realized this wasn't a one-off bad shift. This was a culture. The espresso machine hissed in the background. Indie music played from the ceiling. But behind the polish, something rancid had taken root. A slow rot. A young delivery driver came in neck sweaty, clutching his bag, clearly rushed. He placed his order politely. Renee barely looked at him. Kyle tossed his iced coffee on the counter without a word. Not even his name. The driver waited, unsure. Is this mine? Kyle shrugged. Dunno. Yours if you want it. The driver looked confused, but took it. Then he glanced over at me, and I could see it. That same small sting I had felt earlier. That moment when you realize someone has already decided who you are without hearing your voice. I watched him leave, and I knew if I walked out right now, this would keep happening. To someone's mom, someone's daughter, someone who just needed a brake knock, a reminder of where they fall on someone's invisible scoreboard. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was colder than that. Disappointment. Because I remembered being their age. Hungry. Hustling. Making mistakes. But what I never forgot was that you don't get to earn a better life by stepping on people below you. And right now, they were stomping. I leaned back in my chair and opened my phone, pulled up the internal staff database. There they were. Renee Madison, part-time. 6 months in, flagged once before for attitude toward customer. Kyle Graves, full-time. 2 years, clean record. But 3 team member complaints noted as unsubstantiated. I'd substantiated enough already. I tapped a note. Prepare early exit package. Conduct full review. Then I took a breath. This cafe was supposed to be a safe space. For the overlooked, for the underpaid, for the tired kid trying to finish finals and the immigrant dad grabbing lunch between shifts. But somehow, I'd let that mission slip. That wasn't on them. That was on me. But I had 7 minutes left. And in 7 minutes, their world was going to look very different. When you're the owner, you don't need to yell. You don't need to flash a badge. You don't need to swing power around like a bat. All you need to do is listen long enough. And by minute 6, I had heard everything I needed. Renee was now scrolling through her phone, ignoring the ringing register. Kyle had taken out a protein bar and was chewing behind the bar, clearly against code. A new customer walked in, middle-aged, black, baseball cap and work boots, clearly just off a job site. He looked tired but kind. He asked for a drip coffee and 1 blueberry scone. Kyle didn't say anything, just rang him up and shouted, "Renee, get the scones." Renee huffed. "We're out." The man paused. "There's 1 in the case." She didn't even glance. "Then go get it yourself." That was it. That was the moment. Because I watched that man look down, just like I had. Shoulders drop. Smile fade. Not angry. Used to disappointed. I stood up slowly and walked to the counter. "Guten I think I'm ready now," I said calmly. Kyle looked at me like I was an annoying pop-up ad. "Ready for what?" I smiled. "To introduce myself." He blinked. "Who?" I reached into my back pocket, pulled out a slim black wallet, and placed a matte black metal card on the counter. It read, Devinkata, founder and CEO for House Roasters Group. Their faces didn't change immediately. Not until they read it twice. Not until Renee stepped over to glance and then turned pale. "I thought you looked familiar," said a soft voice behind me. I turned. It was the man with the boots and cap. He nodded slowly. "You're the guy from the television thing, right? The one who talked about giving baristas equity." I smiled. "That's me." Renee stumbled over her words. "We didn't know. You didn't say. You didn't ask." I said, "You assumed." Cal took a half step back. "Sir, we were just joking. It was a rough morning. And stop." I didn't raise my voice, but he stopped. Renee's hands were shaking slightly now. Her gaze darted toward the back exit. I wasn't angry, but I was clear. "You know what's worse than being disrespectful?" I said, "Being casually disrespectful. The kind that's baked into routine. The kind you do without even realizing you've hurt someone." The cafe was silent. Even the grinder had stopped. "You made fun of me when you thought I had nothing. Et continue. You mocked someone who looked tired. You dismissed a paying customer who asked for nothing more than a pastry and kindness." Kyle swallowed. "We didn't mean, but you did it. And that's the point." I turned to the man in the boots. "Would you sit with me for a moment? I'd like to buy you that scone and talk about what kind of store we're supposed to be." He nodded. "Stoned." I turned back to Kyle and Renee. "I suggest you use the next few minutes to collect your things. Security and HR will follow up." And just like that, the 7 minutes were up. After they left quiet, red-faced, fumbling with their bags, I sat down at the corner table with Mr. Lawson, the man in the work boots. He said he was a city maintenance tech, fixed potholes, repaired bus stops, raised 2 kids, never complained. He didn't ask for free drinks. He didn't want a discount. He just wanted to be treated like he belonged. And in my cafe, that should have been automatic. I come here every Wednesday. He said, sipping the coffee I brought over myself. Same order. They never remember me. And it's always like that. Cold, like I'm interrupting something. He didn't sound bitter. He sounded resigned. That was worse. I took out my phone and messaged Jordan, my head of operations. Pour house 14. Pull full security footage from open to 10:45 a.m. Request audio logs from the POS. Interview staff from last 2 weeks. She responded within 30 seconds. Already on it. Want incident tags as well. Yes. And any flag complaints involving Renee or Kyle. And I stood and walked behind the counter. The remaining staffer, a young dishwasher named Avery, and a baker named Lina looked, frozen in place. You two can relax. I said gently, you're not in trouble. Avery let out a breath. We knew it was bad, but they ran the front, and we didn't feel like we could say anything. I get it. I said, but from today forward, you always can. I handed Avery a card with a private number on it. Anything you ever see that goes against how people should be treated, call that number. That's me. Not HR, not the manager. Me? He nodded. Eyes wide. By the time I left that morning, the café was cat. But something had shifted. The remaining team was relieved. Maybe even hopeful. Back at HQ, Jordan had already compiled the report, and it was worse than I expected. 3 internal complaints had been filed in the last 90 days by customers. One anonymous from a coworker. All said the same thing. Unprofessional. Dismissive. Elitist attitude. Kyle had also been caught on camera last week, loudly mocking an elderly woman who asked if they served plain coffee. He called her basic, laughed with another barista, and never apologized. Renee had rolled her eyes at a homeless man who came in asking for water. Told him, this isn't a shelter. All of it was there. On video, on logs, on their records. This wasn't just 2 people having a bad day. This was a pattern. One I had missed while buried in quarterly reports and expansion planning. And now, I wasn't just reacting. I was rebuilding. That night, I drafted a memo. Not a press release. Not PR polish. Just truth. A direct message to all 240 poorhouse employees. You are never allowed to measure someone's worth by what they wear, how they speak, or how much they tip. Our mission has always been to be the table where everyone has a seat. If that no longer excites you, this isn't a place for you. We rise by how we treat those who can't do anything for us. That is our legacy. That is non-negotiable. Devinkata, founder and CEO. And then I scheduled a staff-wide call for Friday, because what happened that morning was just the beginning. What came next was the reawakening of an entire company. Friday morning, 9 o'clock a.m. sharp, the Poorhouse all-staff video call went live. Over 140 employees tuned in, baristas, shift leads, general managers, even a few franchise partners. Most of them expected a quarterly update. Maybe a training refresh, but I wasn't here to talk about inventory. He said center frame, no background blur, no PR filters. Just me and the truth. Before we begin, I said, I need to tell you what happened Tuesday morning at store 14. I saw brows raise, a few muted gasps. Most people had heard something swirling, but not the full story. I recounted it plainly. The jokes, the judgment, the scone, the humiliation. But I didn't raise my voice once. I let the details do the damage. Then I clicked share screen and played 20 seconds of silent footage. It was Kyle laughing, Renee looking me up and down. My sonhos. I showed a still image of my boy sitting beside me that day. He has mild autism, and they had looked right past him too. A ripple went through the screen. Someone in the chat typed, "Unreal." Another, "This is not who we are." I leaned in. What happened this week wasn't just a customer service failure. It was a character failure. And it happened under our name. I paused, let it land. But that's not the worst part. Click. Next slide. 3 excerpts from recent anonymous employee complaints appeared. I've watched new hires be treated like garbage if they didn't look cool enough. The cafe has become cliquey and cold. Not what I signed up for. I stay quiet because I don't want to lose my hours. I looked into the camera. We have created a culture where silence feels safer than speaking up. And that ends today. I took a deep breath, effective immediately. Both employees involved in the Tuesday incident have been terminated, not as an act of revenge, but as a declaration of standards. Heads nodded on camera. But I wasn't done. To every employee who's ever felt unseen, dismissed, talked down to, I see you. And moving forward, you will have a voice. I announced the rollout of a new policy, a direct, anonymous ethics channel to my office, quarterly culture audits by a third party, a new respect and dignity clause in every offer letter. And yes, I added, I'll be visiting locations randomly, in disguise or not, because how you treat someone when you think they don't matter says everything about whether you deserve to wear this logo. Silence. Then one camera unmuted. It was Jordan, my head of ops. She said simply, "Thank you." Another chimed in, then another. Within minutes, the chat was flooded with messages. Proud to work here. Glad we're drawing the line. About time someone said it out loud. I ended the call with one last line. We don't serve coffee. We serve people. And if we forget that, we deserve to fail. That morning, the entire company didn't just hear me. They felt me. Because this wasn't just about one cafe. It was about reclaiming our values. And finally reminding everyone, respect is not optional. The HR paperwork was filed within hours. Renee Madison and Kyle Graves were officially terminated permanent marks on their employee records. Not coded as laid off or voluntarily resigned, but terminated with cause. That distinction would follow them. It wasn't just a job loss. It was a record of how they treated people when they thought no one was watching. The regional manager who had brushed off complaints weeks earlier was issued a formal warning and placed on a 30-day culture recovery plan. With weekly oversight from HQ, I made it clear. Leadership that excuses disrespect is no leadership at all. But the story didn't stay inside our walls. 2 days later, someone who'd been in the cafe that morning, maybe Mr. Lawson, maybe another customer, posted the story anonymously on Reddit. Saw 2 baristas mock a customer who turned out to be their CEO. He fired him on the spot. Coldest, most satisfying thing I've seen all year. It blew up. By the next morning, the story had spread to Twitter and TikTok. Then local news picked it up. Then national. The headline made rounds. Coffee chain CEO goes undercover. Fires disrespectful baristas on the spot. Comments flooded in. This is how you lead. More bosses need to check their culture like this. Hire that man for Congress. I wasn't chasing praise, but I was glad people were finally paying attention to what really matters in service. Dignity, humanity, decency. Meanwhile, Kyle tried to post his version of the story online. Claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that he was being made a scapegoat. But screenshots, timestamps, and video evidence quickly drowned him out. People remembered what it felt like to be treated like he treated others. And they weren't buying it. Renee stayed silent. But word got around. She'd applied to 3 other cafes in the area and been turned down. Her name was now a warning in the local hiring groups. I don't celebrate that, but I also don't apologize for it. Because when you represent my brand new mission, you don't get to walk over people and expect to land softly. You earn your place here, not by being perfect, but by being kind when it's inconvenient. And what about the customers? Poorhouse 14 saw a 37% spike in foot traffic the week after the story broke. Not because people came for the coffee, but because they came for the feeling. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, there's still some companies that believe in something more than margins. One older woman told me, I used to stop coming here because the place felt cold. Now I bring my friends because it feels safe again. That meant more than a quarterly gain ever could. The truth is, we can't control every employee's behavior, but we can control what happens when they show us who they are. And this time, we listened. This time, we acted. Because letting them stay silent would have cost us far more than a few shifts on the schedule. It would have cost us our soul. 2 weeks after the incident, I returned to Poorhouse 14. This time, I walked in through the front door, not undercover, not quiet, not hidden behind a hoodie. I wore a button-down shirt, casual, approachable. But this time, the staff knew exactly who I was. And they stood up a little straighter when I walked in. Avery, the young dishwasher who had once stayed silent in the back, was now wearing a new black apron. A name badge pinned to his chest read, Shift Lead, Avery Thompson. He greeted me with a proud, steady smile. Welcome back. Mr. Carter, your usual. I chuckled. You remembered. He nodded. We remember everyone now. Behind him, the energy of the cafe had changed. The lights somehow felt warmer. The music a little more relaxed. Customers smiled at the baristas. Baristas smiled back genuinely. This time, gone was the icy tension, the invisible social ladder, the judgment. In its place was something better. Connection. I sat down with Mr. Lawson again. Same boots, same quiet strength. I had invited him back personally, and when he walked through that door, every employee greeted him by name. Sir, Avery said, this one's on us. Lawson smiled, and then looked at me. It's different now. I nodded. It will stay that way. Later that week, we launched something new across the entire company. The Respect Reboot Initiative. Every store held a staff-wide reflection session. Not led by managers, but by customers who had experienced moments of being overlooked. We updated our employee handbook with the new Human First policy, placing dignity and empathy above every metric. And we added a peer honor badge, awarded monthly to one team member in each cafe, chosen by anonymous staff votes. And in the first month, Avery won it at Store 14. He received a framed badge, a bonus, and most importantly, an invitation to Poorhouse HQ to help us build the next phase of store training. This was how you heal a company. Not through fear, but through clarity, accountability, and new chances. As for me, I started showing up more, not to hover, but to reconnect. I talked to baristas about their lives. Saturday with customers who felt invisible. Gave out my personal email more times in 2 weeks than I had in the last 2 years. Because I never wanted to be that distant CEO again. I wanted to be present. That's what real ownership looks like. You don't just own the brand. You own the consequences. And you own the promise that every person who walks into your business matters. That includes the janitor, the immigrant, the single mom, the man in the boots, and Ye7, the customer who orders plain black coffee without a smile, because sometimes they're just having a bad day, and other times they're your boss. I didn't fire them to get even. I didn't call the meeting to humiliate, and I didn't do it to go viral. I did it because if I walked out of that cafe and did nothing, I'd be just as guilty. Guilty of watching disrespect unfold and staying silent. Guilty of letting a business I built on community become a stage for cruelty. Guilty of letting someone like Mr. Lawson, someone like my younger self, sit in silence and feel small. And I've been small before. I've been the one ignored, the one judged, the one people assumed couldn't afford the tip jar. So now, when I see it happening to others, especially under my roof, I don't walk out. I walk in, and I remind people exactly who we are. Because at the end of the day, coffee is cheap, but dignity, that's the most expensive thing we serve. And if you're not willing to pour that with every cup, you don't belong behind the counter.